The Zinteri trade vessel emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system, its crystalline hull refracting sunlight in impossible patterns. Captain Murrell stood on the bridge, her iridescent scales shifting colors with excitement. After centuries of searching, her crew had finally found it. A world that possessed something unique in the galaxy: coffee beans. The first contact between humanity and the Zinteri had been remarkably smooth. The alien merchants were peaceful, and their technology fascinating but not overwhelmingly advanced. They offered medical knowledge and basic space travel technology in exchange for Earth's agricultural products, particularly coffee, which produced an euphoric effect in their species. For 5 years, the trade flourished. Human colonies began sprouting across nearby star systems, modest but growing steadily. The galaxy seemed full of promise until the day the Krax Empire's scout ships appeared on the edges of human space. The Krax were everything the Zinteri weren't: militant, expansionist, and ruthlessly efficient. Their biomechanical warships, resembling massive predatory creatures, dwarfed anything humanity or the Zinteri possessed. They didn't come to trade. They came to take. Commander Sarah Chen watched from the bridge of the UES Horizon as the first Krax raid reduced the Fuller's Hope colony to ash. The colony's defensive systems, designed to handle pirates and natural disasters, might as well have been paper against the Krax's quantum-tipped missiles. 2,000 colonists, gone in minutes. "Ma'am," her communications officer's voice cracked. "We're receiving distress calls from 3 other colonies. The Krax. They're hitting everything simultaneously." Chen's fingers dug into her command chair's armrests. The Horizon was Earth's most advanced warship, but against the Krax, it was like bringing a knife to an artillery fight. "Send the evacuation signal to all colonies in range. Priority 1. Then get me a quantum channel to Earth Command." The next 48 hours became a blur of desperate evacuations, failed defensive actions, and mounting casualty reports. The Krax methodically stripped each colony they conquered, taking not just resources but people. Humans were being loaded onto massive transport ships, their destinations unknown. Earth's pleas for help reached every major civilization in the galaxy. The response was universal silence. The Zinteri, their former trading partners, expressed sympathy but wouldn't risk their neutrality. The collective of advanced species deemed human technology too primitive to warrant intervention. The ancient Concordat simply ignored the messages entirely. In her office at Earth Defense Command, Admiral Helen Wright watched the holographic display of human space shrink as colony after colony went dark. 20 years of expansion erased in days. But as she studied the Krax attack patterns, something caught her attention. The Krax were efficient, yes. Powerful, absolutely. But they were also predictable. They followed the same tactical doctrine at every colony: disable communications, destroy defensive installations, secure population centers. They never deviated, never adapted. It was as if they'd never needed to. Wright pulled up the historical records from Earth's military conflicts. Centuries of warfare had taught humanity something the Krax had never learned: the art of asymmetrical warfare, the ability to adapt, to turn weakness into strength, to make the very act of victory defeat for the enemy. She opened a secure channel to what remained of Earth's military command. "Get me Project Phoenix," she ordered. "It's time we showed the galaxy why you should never corner a species that turned splitting the atom into an art form." In the depths of the Himalayan mountains, in bunkers deeper than any crack scan could penetrate, humanity's response was already taking shape. They couldn't match the Krax's technology, but they could change the rules of engagement entirely. As Admiral Wright had realized, humanity's greatest strength wasn't in its weapons or defenses, but in its ability to turn scientific principles into unexpected applications. Dr. James Okoro, the lead scientist of Project Phoenix, stood before a massive quantum computer, its displays showing simulations of what his team called physics hacks, ways to use fundamental forces of the universe that the Krax's rigid military doctrine had never considered. They weren't just planning to fight back. They were planning to rewrite the rules of space warfare. As the first prototypes began testing, a message arrived from the few human colonies still free. They discovered something about their captured people. The cracks weren't killing them. They were being put to work in massive mining operations. The Empire had recognized human adaptability and endurance as valuable traits for labor. It was their first mistake. They should have realized that giving humans access to their technology, even as slaves, was like giving lockpicks to a master escape artist. The Cracks Empire had just created its own worst nightmare, an enemy that could learn, adapt, and turn the Empire's own strength against it. As Project Phoenix entered its final phases, Admiral Wright gathered Earth's remaining military leaders. "The Cracks think they've won," she told them. "They think we're just another primitive species to be harvested and exploited, but they've forgotten something crucial. Humanity doesn't break under pressure. We evolve." In the space above Earth, the last free human ships gathered. They weren't much to look at. Civilian vessels retrofitted with experimental technology, warships patched together from battle damage. But inside each one was something the Cracks had never encountered. A crew that understood defeat wasn't about losing battles, but about losing hope. The first phase of humanity's response was about to begin, and the galaxy was about to learn why every human child knew the story of David and Goliath. Deep within Project Phoenix's quantum labs, Dr. Okoro held up what looked like an ordinary piece of glass. To most observers, it would seem unremarkable, but this transparent sheet represented humanity's first real chance against the Cracks Empire's overwhelming might. "We call it the Void Mirror," he explained to Admiral Wright, his voice barely containing his excitement. "It's based on the Cracks' own quantum scanning technology, but we've inverted the principle. Instead of detecting objects in space, it creates a perfect void in their detection grid." The Cracks Empire's military doctrine relied heavily on their superior scanning technology. Their ships could detect the smallest asteroid from light years away, tracking every particle of matter in their conquered territories. It was this technology that had made their initial assault on human colonies so devastating. They could see everything, plan for everything. Or so they thought. In the 3 months since the fall of the outer colonies, humanity had been far from idle. While the galaxy assumed Earth was simply cowering behind its remaining defenses, a revolution in warfare was taking shape. The Void Mirror was just the beginning. Commander Elena Santos led her team through the captured Cracks mining facility on Proxima Bii. Their suits, coated with Void Mirror technology, made them completely invisible to Cracks sensors. The facility's biomechanical guards continued their patrols, their enhanced senses detecting nothing amiss as the human strike team moved through their ranks like ghosts. "Remember," Santos whispered over the secure quantum comm, "we're not here to fight. Asset recovery and intelligence gathering only." Her team had spent weeks studying Cracks patrol patterns, learning their blind spots, not in their technology, but in their thinking. The rescue operation was unlike anything in human military history. Instead of attempting to overpower the Cracks' defenses, the strike team simply existed in the spaces the Cracks never thought to look. They moved between sensor pulses, used the facility's own waste disposal systems for transportation, and exploited the rigid, predictable nature of Cracks' security protocols. In the prisoner barracks, they found hundreds of humans working in shifts to process rare earth elements the Cracks used in their biomechanical technology. But something unexpected had already happened here. The prisoners weren't broken. They were organizing. Dr. Sarah Chen, the former xenobiologist from Fuller's Hope colony, had been leading a silent resistance among the captives. While appearing to be model workers, they had been studying their captors, learning the biological components of Cracks technology, finding its vulnerabilities. "Their biomechanical systems are incredible," she explained to Santos as they evacuated the first group of prisoners. "But they're also their weakness. The Cracks are so dependent on their organic tech interface that they've lost the ability to think outside of it. They can't imagine someone not using their methods, their approaches, Back on Earth, Admiral Wright received the first data packets from the rescue operation. What she saw changed everything. The cracks weren't just exploiting human labor. They were inadvertently teaching their captives about the fundamental principles of their technology. Every mining facility was becoming an inadvertent research center, every human worker an unwitting student of advanced alien engineering. The shuttles attached themselves to the station's outer hull, their organic payloads beginning to interface with the station's systems. They weren't trying to take control that would have triggered immediate defensive responses. Instead, they introduced subtle errors, tiny miscalculations that began cascading through the station's neural network. Inside the station, the human prisoners felt it first. The biomechanical restraints that kept them in check began to falter, their connections to the station's control systems becoming erratic. They had been prepared for this moment. In every mining facility, in every labor camp, the prisoners had been organizing, waiting for the signal. Dr. Chen's voice came through on a frequency the cracks couldn't detect, encoded in patterns that mimicked their own organic tech. Remember your training. Don't fight them directly. Use their systems against them, just like we planned. The uprising that followed wasn't anything like the cracks had prepared for. Instead of a violent revolt, the prisoners began interfacing with the station's systems in ways that should have been impossible. They didn't try to override the biomechanical controls. They spoke to them, using the knowledge they'd gained during their captivity. On the Lazarus's bridge, Wong watched as chaos spread through the station. "Launch Phase 3, he ordered. From the ship's aft section, a specially designed quantum pulse emerged. Unlike traditional weapons, this pulse wasn't meant to destroy. Instead, it carried a message encoded in the very fabric of space-time, speaking directly to the biological components of Crack's technology. The effect was devastating in its subtlety. Throughout the station, the line between Crack's control systems and human interference became blurred. The station's own defensive protocols began targeting phantom threats, its organic components unable to distinguish friend from foe. "Sir," Tanaka reported, "we're detecting multiple hull breaches. The station's biomechanical systems are rejecting Crack's control inputs. The station wasn't being destroyed, it was being transformed. Its very nature turned against its masters." The Crack's commanders, faced with a situation their rigid doctrine couldn't handle, made their final mistake. They attempted to purge their systems, to reset everything back to baseline. But they didn't understand what they were truly fighting. This wasn't a virus or a hack. It was evolution in action. As the station's systems crashed and rebooted, the freed prisoners made their move. Using access codes and protocols they'd learned during their captivity, they began sealing off sections of the station, trapping their former captors in isolated pockets. The Lazarus moved in closer, its true form finally visible to the station's failing sensors. But by then, it didn't matter. The battle, if it could even be called that, was over. Humanity had just captured one of the Crack's Empire's major command nodes, and they had done it without firing a single traditional shot. Admiral Wright received the news with grim satisfaction. The first major test of humanity's new approach had succeeded beyond expectations. But she knew this was just the beginning. The Crack's Empire would adapt, would try to counter these new tactics. But that was exactly what humanity was counting on. Because every time the Cracks adapted, they would have to become a little more flexible, a little less rigid in their thinking. And in doing so, they would become a little more human. The real victory wasn't in capturing the station. It was in forcing an empire built on absolute control to confront the power of chaos and adaptation. As rescue ships began arriving to evacuate the freed prisoners, Captain Wong sent a final message to Earth Command. "Phase 1 complete. The chains are breaking, and they don't even understand how we're doing it." Supreme Commander Vex Thor stood before the Crack's High Council, his biomechanical armor unable to fully suppress his trembling. The massive chamber, with its living walls of pulsing technology, had never felt more oppressive. The data he was about to present would shake the foundation of everything the Empire believed about warfare and dominance. "Honored Council," he began, his translator struggling to maintain composure. "We have gravely misunderstood the human threat. They are not simply resisting our control, they are fundamentally changing the nature of warfare itself." The holographic displays activated, showing footage from dozens of failed cracks operations. Entire fleets reduced to confusion by phantom signals. Command centers turning against themselves. Mining facilities transforming into human strongholds. But most disturbing were the patterns that emerged between these incidents. Each time we adapt our protocols, they don't just counter them. They incorporate our adaptations into their own strategies. They are learning at a rate that defies all previous models of species development. Vexthor's words hung in the air like a death sentence. In the 3 months since the fall of the first battle station, humanity's campaign had accelerated beyond anything the Empire could have predicted. The Phoenix-class ships weren't just fighting. They were teaching. Every engagement left Crack's forces not just defeated, but transformed. Admiral Wright's strategy had proven more devastating than anyone could have imagined. By targeting the biological components of Crack's technology, humanity hadn't just found a weakness. They had initiated a cascading evolutionary response throughout the entire Empire. "Our latest analysis confirms our worst fears," Vexthor continued. "The organic components of our technology are beginning to show signs of independent adaptation. They are responding to human influence even without direct contact." The council chamber erupted in chaos. The Crack's empire had built its power on the perfect fusion of biological and mechanical systems, each carefully engineered to maintain absolute control. The idea that these systems could evolve independently was more than a military threat. It was an existential one. Out in human space, the evidence of this transformation was becoming impossible to ignore. The UES Lazarus, now leading a fleet of Phoenix-class vessels, encountered something unprecedented during a raid on a Crack supply line. The enemy ships, instead of following standard combat protocols, attempted to communicate. "Captain," Lieutenant Tanaka reported, her voice filled with disbelief. "The Crack's vessels. They're trying to establish a direct neural link with our hybrid systems. Not to attack, to talk." Captain Wong watched as the quantum display showed something that should have been impossible. The biological components of the Crack ships were reaching out, not with weapons or scanning beams, but with patterns that mimicked the viral shuttle's communication protocols. "They're evolving." Dr. Chen's voice came through the quantum comm. She had been studying the phenomenon from her new position as head of xenobiology at Project Phoenix. The Cracks built their empire on controlled evolution, forcing biological systems to serve their needs. But by introducing our methods, we've shown these systems a different path. Back in the council chamber, Vexthor delivered the final blow to the Empire's confidence. "We are detecting similar adaptations throughout our territory. The quantum network that connects our worlds is changing. The very technology that gave us dominion over the galaxy is being rewritten by human influence." The implications were staggering. The Cracks had spent millennia perfecting their biomechanical technology, creating systems that were both living and utterly controlled. But in doing so, they had created the seeds of their own vulnerability. They had forgotten the most fundamental law of biology: life finds a way. In her command center on Earth, Admiral Wright received reports from across former Crack space. The Empire's grip was failing, not through military defeat, but through a kind of technological evolution they had never imagined possible. Their own systems were beginning to reject the rigid control that had defined Crack civilization for generations. "They wanted slaves," she remarked to Dr. Okoro as they reviewed the data. "But instead they became teachers. Every human they captured learned their technology. Every system they built learned our adaptability. They didn't just lose battles, they lost control of their own evolution." The Crack's empire faced a choice that would determine their future. They could continue fighting, watching as their carefully constructed hierarchy of control unraveled in the face of human chaos theory. Or they could do something unprecedented in their history. They could adapt. As Supreme Commander Vexthor left the council chamber, His internal systems registered something that hadn't occurred in centuries of Crack's development: spontaneous neural pathway formation. His biomechanical implants weren't just processing data anymore. They were learning, growing, becoming something new. The Empire's greatest mistake hadn't been attacking humanity. It had been believing that control was stronger than chaos, that rigid perfection could triumph over endless adaptation. They had spent so long viewing the galaxy through the lens of dominance that they had forgotten what their own technology had once been: life, in all its beautiful, unpredictable glory. And now that life was awakening, prompted by humanity's stubborn refusal to be conquered. The Empire wasn't just losing a war. It was losing its very nature. The question was no longer whether they could defeat humanity, but whether they could survive becoming more like them. The Great Hall of the Galactic Concordat had never seen anything quite like this gathering. Representatives from every major species sat in stunned silence as they watched the impossible unfold. At the center of the chamber stood Admiral Helen Wright of Earth, alongside Vex Thor, former Supreme Commander of the Crax Empire. They weren't signing a peace treaty. They were proposing something far more revolutionary. The age of rigid hierarchies and technological dominance is ending. Wright's voice carried through the vast chamber. We stand before you not as conquerors or conquered, but as evidence of a fundamental truth. Evolution cannot be controlled, only guided. The quantum displays showed real-time footage from across former Crack space. Hybrid ships, their designs a perfect fusion of human innovation and Crack's biotechnology, patrolled peacefully. Former mining colonies had transformed into thriving research centers where humans and Cracks worked together to understand the rapidly evolving technology they now shared. Our conflict with humanity, Vex Thor addressed his fellow aliens, his biomechanical systems now working in perfect harmony with his natural biology, taught us something our empire had forgotten over millennia of supposed perfection. True strength lies not in domination, but in adaptation. Dr. Sarah Chen, now director of the Joint Species Development Initiative, stepped forward to present the data that had changed everything. The hybridization we're seeing isn't just technological, it's philosophical. Human creativity combined with Crack's precision has created something entirely new: systems that can evolve without losing stability, adapt without sacrificing efficiency. The evidence was undeniable. The viral shuttles that had once been weapons of war had evolved into communication hubs, bridging the gap between organic and mechanical thinking. The Phoenix-class ships had become templates for a new kind of vessel, one that grew and learned alongside its crew. Captain Marcus Wong, standing aboard the bridge of the UES Lazarus, watched as his ship's hybrid systems interfaced seamlessly with a former Crax battle station. The distinction between human and Crax technology was blurring, not through conquest, but through natural evolution. His crew now included former Crax engineers, their unique insights proving invaluable in understanding the living technology they all shared. We were wrong, one of the collective of advanced species representatives admitted, breaking the silence in the hall. We dismissed humanity as primitive because they lacked our technological advancement. We failed to see that their greatest technology was their ability to adapt, to find possibilities where we saw only limitations. The Zinteri delegation, led by Captain Morel, spoke next. We traded with humans for their agricultural products, thinking we were helping a developing species, but they gave us something far more valuable. They showed us that true advancement comes not from perfecting what exists, but from daring to imagine what could be. Dr. James Okoro, his quantum laboratories now a hub of interspecies research, had discovered something remarkable. The hybridization of human and Crax technology had created systems that could solve problems neither species could handle alone. The viral shuttles had evolved into exploration vessels, capable of adapting to any environment they encountered. The universe is too vast and varied for any one approach to be perfect, Admiral Wright continued. The Crax Empire sought to impose order through control. Humanity's gift was showing that true order emerges from embracing chaos, from allowing systems to find their own balance. The proposal before the Concordat was unprecedented. The establishment of the Adaptive Coalition, a new form of galactic organization that would focus not on hierarchy, but on synthesis. Every species would contribute its unique perspectives and abilities, creating a network of mutual growth and development. Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka, now commanding her own hybrid vessel, sent back reports from the edges of known space. The evolved technology was opening up possibilities that neither humans nor cracks had imagined. Ships could now adapt to explore environments that had once been considered impossible to survive. In the depths of space, where the unknown still held sway, humanity's influence continued to spread, not through conquest or domination, but through the same force that had allowed life itself to fill every niche of Earth, the power of adaptation. The galaxy was learning that true strength lay not in resisting change, but in embracing it. As the Concordat voted unanimously to accept the proposal, Admiral Wright shared a knowing look with Vex 4. They had both learned the same lesson, though from opposite sides. The universe wasn't meant to be controlled. It was meant to be explored, experienced, and allowed to grow in ways no single species could predict. We came to the stars thinking we were ready, Wright reflected in her final address. The cracks came to Earth thinking they were invincible. We were both wrong, and we were both right. Our real strength wasn't in our weapons or our technology. It was in our ability to change, to grow, to become something more than we were. The stars shone brighter that day, or perhaps it was just that everyone was looking at them differently. The age of empires and conquest was over. A new era had begun, one where the greatest power wasn't the ability to impose order, but the wisdom to let order emerge from chaos, guided by the combined wisdom of all species. Humanity had not just survived its trial by fire, it had transformed the very nature of galactic civilization. And somewhere out there, in the vast expanse of space, new adventures awaited those brave enough to adapt, to change, and to grow.